Hello, everyone. I am Amy McMillan, the chair of the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union, and I welcome all of you to our regularly scheduled Supervisory Union Board meeting. And I also hope that all of you had a lovely holiday. First, are there any changes or additions to the agenda? That is wonderful. Thank you. Next up, we have approval of the minutes. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from October 24th.
Second.
That is Nikki. And the second, I'm sorry, is Rebecca. Okay, are there any corrections, clarifications, additions needed? Hearing none, I will do the roll call. I'll start with people online. Anne Marie.
I have to abstain. I wasn't there.
Okay, thank you. Beth.
Aye.
Colleen.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Nancy. Can't hear me. Bill.
Aye.
Nikki.
Aye.
And Rebecca.
Aye.
Okay, and Elizabeth is here now. Elizabeth, we're voting to approve the minutes.
Aye. I mean, aye.
Yes. You are an aye. Okay, the minutes have been passed. Thank you very much. Moving on, we have announcements from the board and public participation. Is there anyone who would like to make any sort of announcement, or anyone from our public who would like to speak? Hudson?
So I spoke briefly with Rebecca before the meeting, and we were kind of talking about, I wanted to get the board's thoughts on the, there is an education being done about Robert's rules in school. And it's very important, as we need to know how to, I know how to do it, but my friends don't know what Robert's rules is and how to make a motion or how to correctly participate in a meeting. And I wanted to get the board's thoughts on that and see, so having something being done to inform kids about how to correctly participate in a meeting.
That's interesting, because I would think any of the organizations, such as student council or the organizations that have leadership, would follow some sort of something. I suppose if someone wanted to go to a meeting and just kind of can talk about that.
Also sounds like a good social studies
Yeah,
government
Yeah.
lesson.
Davis. Could the person whose phone number ends in 84, could you mute, please?
I'm mute.
Oh, we heard her on both spots.
Davis, you are muted.
My apologies. Hudson, this may be a little bit outside of the scope that you were thinking of with that question, but another good opportunity to help present some educational material to the student body and the public is chatting with Paula at Windsor on Air. She's always down to help create content. So if you were interested in working on some sort of content about Robert's Rules and creating a short video, she's a good resource to talk to. She's pretty good at pulling people together to make that sort of thing. And that could be something that's shared with the school and the broader Windsor community.
Great. Thank you, Davis.
That's really cool, Davis.
Elizabeth?
Thanks, Amy. I know I missed the part of the meeting where we added things to the agenda, but yes, Davis, but Hudson brings up the point that I think we were going to add to the agenda a discussion of whether we wanted to have student.
I can't hear you at all. I have this going into my ears.
It's in my report, Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have an announcement.
Yes. Thank you.
Heartland has their variety show for the drama program on Friday. I believe it's at 6:30. And it raises money for the drama club.
Great, thank you.
6:30. 6:30 on Saturday the 2nd.
Friday the 2nd.
Sorry, Friday the 2nd.
Yeah, Friday the 2nd.
Friday the
Because
2nd.
Saturday
I looked
the
down and read
3rd is the Heartland Community Arts.
Yes.
Yes, and I'm in it.
So Heartland's got a lot of arts going on.
Yeah,
Friday.
yeah, they do.
What's going on Saturday?
Heartland Community Arts, the holiday and frolic.
What time is that?
That is at 7, I think. Okay, moving on. Our next item is the Vermont School Board Association assistance with our superintendent search. And we have our consultant here.
So my name is Jackie Wilson. A little bit about me. I retired as a superintendent in 2020. And I'm from Southern Vermont, that's why I'm here with you. The SBA looks to see where folks are the closest in proximity, so that's pretty much how they make their decisions. I was in Bennington Rutland Supervisory Union, spent almost my whole career there except for 2 years, so I spent 30 years down there. And so a lot of similarities to your current supervisory union. I went through consolidation and we were a 12 board supervisory union and went down to 4 boards. So lots of different configurations and have a good understanding of that complexity and the challenges that went along with that. I've also worn many hats. I was superintendent for 4 years, an assistant before, but spent most of my time as a principal assistant, just so you know a little bit about my experience. So I'm here tonight. What I'd like to do is I communicated with Amy and she sent you a few documents that I wanted you to take a look at. And I have hard copies of those they're right by Amy if you prefer to have a hard copy. But I think tonight would be great for me to get some feedback from you on the process. I've outlined for you some suggestions as to how to proceed, and the purpose tonight is for me really to get feedback from you, and I'll come back to you again, and then you'll have to take some action steps about approving the charge and the timeline process. But tonight we'll just get to know each other a little bit and take a look at how I'm proposing you navigate through the process. Okay. So I'll start first with the timeline document. That's the one that's 3 pages. And what I've done is taken a look at, through my past experience of working through superintendent searches and what makes sense, what I've experienced and what I think the timeline could be. I will tell you right now that it changes constantly, and I will make adjustments every time I make a change, and I'll let you know there's a change. But this is based on our best guess. It's based on our best guess that you're going to get the candidates that you want to interview, that we're going to be able to get them into the interview process on the dates that we've set aside. that the screening committee is satisfied and has candidates they want to move forward to the board. So there's a lot of assumptions made in that, and I tell you that because it's totally flexible and it will adapt based on the reality of what unfolds as we work through the process. So right now, first date, we're just here to talk and get to know each other and for me to get some feedback. And the big things that you're going to need to be thinking about is, yeah, are we okay with this process and what the time frame looks like? And I will ask at your next meeting to take an action on that, yay or nay, okay? The next one is a big one, and we'll go over it, is the screening committee charge, because this process, what I'm recommending is you have two parts to it. One is the screening committee, and they do that first layer of work. They take a look at what comes in for resumes. They make decisions about who they want to interview for the first round of candidates. And then ideally, they are able to identify 3 people, at least 3. It's a tough market, so I'll say we'll be in good shape if we get 3. And those 3 people then are moved forward as finalists, and then this board will take over with the interview process. So there's 2 levels to that. And I'm recommending the screening committee that there are 3 board members from this board that will follow through that whole process. So you're part of the screening committee, and then you're also part of course, of the full board as you move into the second tier of what you need. So that's something I want you to be thinking about. That's just a basic outline of the process, and the screening committee charge. The job posting, it's important that you capture, I think, what you want in a superintendent. And I'm going to suggest to you that I put out to all of this board a pretty short questionnaire, probably 3 questions or so, that will get at what you think the priorities are and what you really want to see in your next superintendent. And then I would take that information and I would put together a draft for you of a job posting that then you could take a look at and see if that is what you really, if that's what you want. The thing I want you to think about is, do you want to go beyond that? Some boards say, well, we'd like you, Jackie, to get a little feedback from some central office folks to see what they're looking for. Maybe the union. I don't know, you don't need to do that, but if you want to do that, I would want to know, and I'd want to know who to reach out to and who to get that information from. So it will be important, I think, to capture that, because you have priorities in your supervisory union, and you want to make sure that you're putting that out there and that the candidates are aware of it. So in a way, you're selling yourself as to what's important to you, and you also have the opportunity to really kind of think about that. This is what we want, and that helps inform you as you move through the process and what kind of questions you're going to ask, etc. So I think it's an important thing to do. And the other thing I really want you to think about is a salary range. I would strongly suggest that in your posting, you put a salary range. I've had boards run into trouble when we haven't done that. And then that's not clear, and you get to that final point, and it's not going to work for the
And all of
kids.
your work.
And you don't want to do that. So I will provide for you at the next meeting. I'll give it to you ahead of time, so you'll have it in ample time. Some comps. So I've already reached out to the Vermont Superintendent's Association and said, what could you give me some comparable districts that I can look at, and I have the average right now, the new average for this year. That information's been given to me. So I'll just give you some information to chew on and think about, and you don't have to come up with an exact number, but you should have a range, whether that person's had experience. Maybe it's a $20,000 range in there, but you should have that in there. So I'm going to ask you to think about that And that becomes part of the posting. And the other thing I need you to think about in the next couple of weeks, because it does kind of depend on, it will influence the timeline, is how you want to handle reference checks. So reference checks, I believe they should happen, the in-depth reference checks should happen after you've gone through the semi-finalist interviews with the screening committee, and the screening committee has identified who they want to move forward, and then you go into doing some in-depth reference checks. The screening committee is not privy to that information. The screening committee, when they've done their job, they are giving you candidates to interview for finalists, but they are not ranking them. And they are not saying this is our number 1 candidate, this is our number 2 candidate. They are going to give you candidates, and you're going to start with that, and you're going to make some decisions based on your experience with interviewing those candidates. The reference checks, what I recommend doing, and what I have found to work well, is that the reference checks are done after the semi-finalists have been, the semi-finalist interviews, finalists have been identified, reference checks get done, and then when you have finished your interviews and you're ready to deliberate, I will share that information. Okay? So it hasn't tainted you before. And if there's something that I find out that's like, whoa, this is really alarming, I better let them know. They better not have this person come in, and I'll let you know that. But I think that works well. And it has been, I always give the option to boards, do you want to divvy that up and have a shared responsibility for doing reference checks? Or do you want me to do them? And I will come back to you. Every time they say, Jack, we want you to do them, you don't need to make that decision now. It has worked well. I mean, I have a script. I ask set questions, and then I come back. And I don't share with the board everything, the script, but I will give you a summary. Here's what I heard, and here's the strengths, and here's the challenges, just so you know that. So that's another thing I need you to think about over the next couple of weeks, is how you might want to do it. Okay, because that will influence our time. So the rest of this doc, it just kind of really shows you, I've looked at your schedule of meetings, so I know when you're meeting over the next few months, and I've tried to align the chunks of work that you would need to be involved in when you have those regular meetings. So I'm not pulling you into, extra time. But when you will have to have extra time is when you get into that situation where you are conducting your finalist interviews. Okay? So I've kind of outlined the next 2 weeks, what I need you to think about. We move into the week of December 19th. We're hopefully going to have made a selection on those screening committee members, and that you've approved that charge, and that the process and the timeline, and the job posting and the salary range. So those things that I've just spoken to you about that I want you to think about for 2 weeks, when you come back on your meeting on the 19th, and how long is that from now? A couple of weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks? That you'll have that, you'll know how you want to move on that. So we're going to, in a minute, get to the screening committee charge. You need to start thinking about who you want on that committee, and how are you going to handle that, and how are you going to get those people. And because the board needs to take an action on that. Then I'll get out, you'll see I put in my notes and what my job as a consultant. I'll start right after that meeting, I will start to prepare the final job posting. I'm going to reach out to the screening committee, and I hope to have my first meeting with the screening committee the first week of January. And get together with them. And then we'll meet a couple of times, the screening committee. We develop interview questions. We do a schedule. We decide how we want to structure those interviews. And then I will post the position through VSBA. They have a School Spring account, and I'll do the posting on that. And then I will give access to all the screening committee members. They will become members of that evaluation team, and they'll be able to look fully at the resumes. Okay, so you get to fully have access to all of that. And of course, after that, we talk about confidentiality and all those things that, that you need that if you're having access to all of that information. And then the screening committee does a ranking. They say, yeah, these are the people we're really interested in seeing. And so, that hopefully that may be 5 to 8 people, don't know, but that's the hope. Is that we'll have that many that we can take a look at. And then we'll start that interview process with the semi-finalists. The final interview schedule, then what did I put? Oh, I'm hoping to engage in final interviews the first week in March. And again, things that and you don't need to make those decisions right now. I've put this in our task. The things you'll need to think about is, how do you want to structure those final interviews? Do you want it just to be the board? Do you want it to be different stakeholder groups, like you almost have a round robin, like there's a group of teachers, there's a group maybe of the building administrators? How do you want to do it? Do you involve students in it? How do you want to make that happen? Or does it just want to be the board? There's no right or wrong. I don't know your culture well enough to know right now. And maybe as I get to know all of you and work with the screening committee, I might have some thoughts on that, but I don't know yet. But those are things we'll need to decide in the next couple of months when you get to that final one. And do you want to have visitations? Do you want your final candidates to come to your schools and meet different groups of people, and then you get feedback from those groups, like how was the visit, what do you think? So you can involve your stakeholders as much as you feel you want to or need to, or whatever is appropriate for your system. So those are, again, other things that you want to chew on a bit as you move through this, as to what would work for our system and work for us. Okay? So I'm hoping that, by at least the second week in March, and again, this is if everything went, which it never does, but if it did, that you would be in a position to offer somebody the position. Okay. So that's that timeline. I know it's a lot. You take a look at it. If you have any questions, you can shoot me an email, and I will, if you do want to engage in doing the survey to give me some input to the job posting, I would reach out to all of them individually and have my contact information. So I would like to know from you right now, is that something, because that's some work I'll want to do in the next week or so. How do you want to approach that, the job posting? Do you want to do something like that? Get some feedback from everybody?
Yeah, I think a survey would be very helpful, and to include board members and central office and our administrators and teachers. And I'm not sure, maybe offer it.
How do I get that? Yeah.
You can, Lori at the central office. Lori Brown.
So teachers is huge.
Yeah.
Do you have any representative group? Maybe it's association? Is there any,
About the faculty advisory committee.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's already
that,
established.
yeah, that's probably,
So I want to get faculty, I talked to Lori, I want faculty advisory committee.
She can help you with that.
central office, building administrators.
Right.
And you, okay,
Correct.
great. So I'll work with Lori to get all of that information in so that I can start communicating.
So, we have 3 independent boards, 4 towns. I think it might be good for us to set up the boundaries of the 3 board members. If everyone from each district.
Or change it to 4 board members.
Yeah, you can change that. I put.
But I agree with you, we
Yeah.
should.
Right,
We
yeah.
should make
I
that-
think it needs to be at least one from each board.
Right.
But perhaps one from each town.
So let's have that discussion right now, because that's important. If you want to start thinking about, someone will need to take the lead on who approaching folks and who might that be. So you're saying 4, so help me. So you have 4 boards, so you
No, we
want.
have 3 boards, 3 districts to
Do we have
make
the
up.
SU board, so there are 4 boards.
So 4
Right,
boards.
there are 4 boards, but there are
3
3 districts
Right,
with 4 towns. And each town has 3 members on the SU.
sure. So probably 4 board members then, 1 representative from each town.
Right, I think so.
Because that's going to be some of you would be, you can wear both hats.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So I recommend board chairs at the next regular meeting that you have with your boards to see who would like to be on that committee.
I think that's a comfortable place to have that discussion.
Because all of our meetings are going to happen soon. so-
Yes.
One thing I do want to let you know is that whoever becomes at the first screening committee meeting will elect a chair. And whoever becomes that chair really becomes my lifeline. That person has to, sometimes it's almost every day we're communicating about something when we're busy.
Mhm.
And it's very beneficial if that chair is also a member of this board. Because you bring that continuity through the whole process, okay? So I really strongly recommend that. So someone who is on this board, I'm hoping, will want to do that work. And just know that it is, for a few weeks, there's a lot of responsibility around that work. Because I need to count on you that when I reach out to you, that will be there. All right, so that's another thing to think about. So great, so 4 board members, 2 building administrators, does that work?
I think so.
And how do we want to go about that? Finding out who that would be.
We can do that.
Um,
at an admin
When you
meeting.
have an admin meeting, yeah, so,
Okay, all right. And 2 central office,
We can do that at our, we can do that, at the central office.
and a teacher and a support staff.
You can certainly put it out. You want only 1?
I know,
Well,
that's not
I mean, that's up to you, and you can have more. Let me put it this way, that the original proposal that ends up with 9 members. I'm comfortable getting up to maybe 12. You get more than that,
Yeah.
You know, it gets hard to manage.
yeah,
and
it gets hard to
get
schedule meetings.
schedules, and it's just hard to manage.
Right,
So the optimum, I love around 10,
Yeah.
but
Do we
Yeah.
want to throw that to one or both of the unions?
We could do that. That's a good idea.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think one representative makes sense because we'll get
Yep.
more feedback. This is only the initial committee,
Yes.
Right.
and so we'll get more feedback when we need more feedback, and it's more important.
So is there an association for your support staff and a different association for your teachers, right? So you're approachable, I think that makes sense. See, let them make that decision. Okay. So that would bring us to 10, and I think that sounds good.
Okay. And just a moment, Elizabeth. I just have one more comment. I know that our communities are very interested in this process. And I'm wondering how or if there can be input from community members. Could there be someone from the community? And I'm not sure how we would find.
Or another approach is to have, I agree with you, we have some very qualified and strong community members, but when I've seen their warned meetings, if there might be a period during those meetings for community members to share their thoughts to the committee, not sit on the board necessarily, but I mean, I don't know, it's just an idea.
Yeah.
Another thing that I have done was we all got so good at doing remote things and using online surveys or code,
Mhm.
so everybody's skill set has moved in that area. I did in one search last year, do a survey, and it's very similar to what the survey that I'm gonna put out to all of you about the qualities you're looking for. And we put a similar survey right on the website, on the district
That's a
page.
good idea.
Oh, that's a,
And so
yeah.
then people could, respond to that and I've done it a couple of times. I learned, again, you learn your lessons. The first one was too open-ended. The second one, it had choices so that
Yeah.
we could, so I think what I would do is after I had feedback from all of you, I would narrow that down, and then that survey that went out to the community would be more focused. And also, there's always a space for other comments, but that may be the best way to approach that.
Okay. Yeah, that would be, I think that would be really good.
And tied to that, Amy, I'm wondering about I'll need from you, there has to be like a point person for communication. So who's your tech folks that can, it's good to have a website or a page on your website set up that you're constantly communicating, here's our process, here's where we are, this is what we're doing. That really needs to happen because you want to be totally transparent with your community, and they need to know where you are. And a lot of that content I can provide because it will be similar to work I've been doing in the screening committee with all of you. So I can provide a lot of content, but I'm not, it just wouldn't be in my role to be managing that,
Right.
putting that there at all. So I don't know how we do that, but it is something you need to think about.
If you have the content, you can just contact me and I'll make sure it's up. We'll
Okay,
create a separate page for it.
okay, perfect. Okay,
Just what I was
sounds
gonna
good.
say.
Yeah.
Larry. We're all gonna yell your name, but then we decided you
Yeah.
to speak up.
It always happens.
Seal our eyes on it. I know.
And he's just kind of.
Loud and clear.
I was looking down, but
Yeah.
I'll take care of it.
Okay, so we have two hands raised. Elizabeth, you were first technically, is that okay, Anne?
Thanks, Amy, and thanks, Anne. I was going to ask about community involvement, and I am not satisfied with the answer. I think it's great to survey the community, but I really think it's really important to have a community member from each, at least one community member from each town on the committee that's doing the every step of the way. Otherwise, I mean, no, I don't think it would be right to do it without a lot of community input. Thanks.
Thank you. Anne?
I just wanted to say that the way that Weathersfield did our principal search really worked out well. And the way the community members were involved in that was during the, like after there were community members involved in the committee as well, but after the committee picked their top 3, then they had these stakeholder meetings, and there was a community stakeholder meeting, and there was a teacher stakeholder meeting, and there was a student stakeholder meeting. So there would be community involvement at that stage if we do that sort of thing.
Right. And so the last 2 superintendent searches that I've been part of, we had a similar process.
Yeah.
And the candidates who were the finalists,
Yeah.
they visited each school,
Mhm.
and it was, so they would go from school to school to school. Yeah, to school. And then one more part of the process would be to meet with students and then to meet with the community members. So it would be a really full day for the people, and then they would have their final interview with the board.
I think that
However,
makes
that
sense,
can
yeah.
be, and that could happen on different days so that we're not all going kind of wild and crazy. Yes, Hudson.
I just really want to emphasize with the student involvement on this, because I really think we need student input for the superintendent search. Like even keeping the high school student council informed and letting us possibly sit in on an interview would be really beneficial to get student feedback. I don't know how that works with confidentiality. I'm assuming that gets kind of tricky. But doing the building tours and having the candidates come in and kind of discuss with us.
Yeah, and the previous superintendent searches that I was part of here, there was a student group that met with the candidates.
I think that's and I would recommend, I think it's really appropriate to do when you have your final candidates, that it's really good to
Mhm.
have a community group, maybe a separate parent group, it depends, they might be one of the same, to have the students, to have a teacher group. I think it's really important to do all of that. So I think that's the place to do it, is to have them involved at that level, and then they can give, and we can get feedback. We can have a feedback form from those groups and say, what did you feel the strengths of this candidate were? What do you still have any questions? Do you have any recommendations for the board? And then again, that's something you can look at when you get into your deliberation. So we can organize that and get feedback from those groups before you head into deliberation.
That'd be good. Beth?
One thing to also just consider a little bit is just, I've heard this happening in more nonprofit world, but reimbursing candidates for, if you're going to do a full day of something like that, that's an entire wage day lost for folks. And so to make sure that it's an equitable association, that somebody that's maybe coming from a lower paying position has the ability to participate, because they'll be losing a whole day's work in that process. Or at least reimbursing for mileage if they're, driving from who knows where or something. But just something to think about.
Thanks. Elizabeth?
Thanks. Sorry, I remembered the other half of the comment that I was going to make, which is that I think the stakeholder groups extend beyond the obvious. I think that it also extends to regular old community members who don't have kids in the schools, who have a vested interest in the success of the school system. And I think we have a lot of people who have expertise in these areas who we could tap to help us out if we made them, if we invited them to be part of the process. Thanks.
Thank you.
It's the kind of job whomever becomes the chair of the steering committee and then is on the board. I'll be saying to that person, okay, how do we, communicate with a larger community and get those folks involved? So that's
Right.
the kind of thing that I won't know, but I'll look to the chair to know.
Beth?
Same idea of compensation of just like, how can we compensate folks that are going to be on this committee? Because that's a big lift and not a lot of people can do it, or offering childcare and things like that, just so we can get a diverse crew on the committee.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca?
Two things. I do want to respond to Beth's suggestion, and I think that is really important, not only for those candidates who eventually will participate as applicants, but also for those who are stakeholders. I don't know how you would compensate. I don't know if it necessarily has to be money, but I think it's really worth looking at how do you compensate someone and thank them for the work that they are doing. So I think that is important. And the other point, in response to Elizabeth's suggestion, is I'm wondering if one way to get stakeholders from the community involved is to set up whoever is identified as the board member that will be working with Jackie, that board member, set up a day and get that information out and maybe even post it on the school website or whatever to, and on the town manager's newsletter, to let folks that know we are having a particular community day to get input, and specifically this is what it's for. Because I know what Elizabeth is talking about. I happen to know a lot of folks who are retired, are not part of the system, but have been involved and paying attention to what's going on in the school, and are very interested in sort of like, keeping that going. So I think that's it's like, how do we keep them engaged? They're already asking to be engaged.
Another thing I did last year in a search was this district had 2 final candidates, and we put out a survey to all the stakeholders and said, what questions do you they're going to have our 2 candidates. They did a virtual, I don't want to say virtual forum with the communities. So they have an hour. So what questions do you have for the candidates? And so we took a Google survey with that information. Then the board chair was the one who posed, we had those questions. The board chair posed those questions to the candidates in that online forum. And it went really well. And then we also had a survey after that for each candidate. And we said, so give us your feedback. What did you think the strengths of this candidate were? How would you rate them in these different areas? And so there's lots of things you can do. And again, those will develop as we move through the process and we know who the candidates are and what to, and we start to get a sense of what the needs are of the community and how to navigate that. But there's lots of choices we can have for making sure that we get all the feedback we need. that you get all the feedback you need to get to make those decisions.
So when do you want us to finalize the timeline? Is that at our December meeting?
Yes, at your
Okay.
December meeting, you'll finalize the timeline, and then I'm also hoping that you will have, at that point, have members to pick for the screening committee, and that you will approve that.
Okay,
Okay, so there should be names that come forward at that meeting. And if you have multiple folks and you're not sure, you can, as a board, go into executive session, because it's really the appointment of a public official for that committee. So you have that ability to go into executive session to have that discussion if you need to.
okay,
But do plan on the next meeting. It would be good to get those names, because you're going to approve the charge and with the names of the committee members.
okay, great.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other questions for Jackie? Hearing none.
Okay, well, thank
Thank
you.
you.
I'm looking forward
Thank you.
to it. It will be, I always learn a lot. I get to connect with the whole community. I've made a lot of connections and friends from doing these. We
Yeah.
get to know each other pretty well after 3 months of
Yes,
time together.
after, I know from previous superintendent searches that I've been part of, you get to know faculty and,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's great. And I didn't get lost tonight, and
That's
all
good.
good.
That's great.
I said the Windsor School, but then I said Windsor High School. I'm like, well, I'll take a chance.
Yeah.
Well, it's one and the same.
We are, yeah.
So thank you very much. And so you'll, and I'll haunt you if you don't answer this. I'll give you a timeline to answer the survey, and if you don't, I'll haunt you. So just know I'm pretty persistent.
Okay, great.
But I'll get something out to you in the next week or so, okay?
Wonderful.
All right,
Thank you,
Thank you
Jackie.
very much.
Safe travels heading back to your,
Oh, thanks. It's not too bad. At least there's some Christmas lights to see.
Yeah.
They'll really be good in December. And I'll be in touch with you, Aaron, too.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
take care. Thank you for coming this
Yeah,
evening.
thanks for coming. Yeah.
Next, we have our administrative
Alrighty.
report.
Here we go.
Daughters.
All right. So I'm gonna, Brittany's data report is attached to this report, so it'll be seamless. I've tried to structure the report this month really with a focus on the strategic plan goals, because I think that's important for keeping us on track towards our strategic plan. So as you know, and I zipped over that quickly, those are our 3 main goals in the strategic plan: student success and engagement, culture and student wellness, and information and communications. And I am very, very pleased to report under student success and engagement that we have 1 student, Amanda Riley, middle level student in 8th grade, who was accepted to the Vermont Youth Leadership Council, which is very, very exciting, and we're very pleased to have representation.
Yeah, that's great.
And we had multiple students apply, which was great as well. So I can't remember how many kids there are total across the state. Maybe 20?
They had 200 applicants, and I think they have, I think it's like 40 all told.
Together? Oh, that's great. So thank you, Elizabeth. I wanted to just bring attention to some of the things that we're doing across the SU. that are engaging our students, because we think that's really important in creating the culture and high achievement in our kids. So we do have a high school Leader in Me Lighthouse team. Hudson is part of that team, which is exciting. And they are getting off the ground under the leadership of Jeff Bache and Kim Brink Johnson, and our consultant from Leader in Me. Her name is Barb. And so they're meeting regularly, which is exciting. We have students leading assemblies in all our schools. We have students engaged in leadership roles in all our schools. At the middle level, we have students that are able to select electives, which is something that they asked for and we were able to implement. So they get some choice, some voice and choice in what they're learning. If you're in and out of the buildings, which we make a point of being in and out of buildings, in many, many classrooms, we're seeing an approach to learning using centers or stations, which gives kids opportunities to work independently and make some choices in what they're learning, which is something we've been working at implementing. We have our high school student council custodial dinner last month, which was totally student planned and led, and was just a wonderful experience. I got to go and participate and watch the kids thank our custodians for all the work they do, and it was just heartwarming. Yeah, it was a pretty special event. We have an athletic student leadership council, and they plan activities for younger students and lead those. We have capstone projects in process. We have our student advisory council meeting with Mike Nicholson, which the next one will be December 5th. He meets with the kids he meets with the parents and the community group. So lots of opportunities for students to be engaged.
Christine, the electives on the middle level, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
With a lot of work, figuring out
when and how.
What we can offer, what we can put into the schedule. And I will tell you, the schedule is a barrier and resources are a barrier, but you figure out what we can offer and when we can offer it, and we put it into practice, and the kids get to select. And they don't always get everything they want, but they get to prioritize their choices, and they get to have a little choice in what they're learning, which is pretty important.
Especially for the middle level. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And the teachers have to step up and teach those electives. So it's sometimes takes teachers out of their comfort zone as well. Which is great. Under culture and student wellness, I just wanted you to be aware that I went with a few lead learners and school counselor. We went to the Governor's School Safety Conference last month, actually earlier this month, November 2nd. And it was pretty powerful. The biggest takeaway, I think, from the whole day was really having a good system in place for behavior threat assessments. If you're hearing kids saying things, you need to look into it. It's see something, say something kind of campaign, because the kids that do shoot people in schools, they cry for help first, in most cases. And so there are things that you can do to help before it gets to that point. So we've been working as an administrative team to make sure we have a common behavior threat assessment that has all the components necessary for asking the right questions, and really it's almost creating like a wraparound approach for these kids, because they're the kids that are alienated. They don't have a sense of belonging. They don't feel included. They don't really want to harm others, but they get to that desperate place where they're depressed and they feel like they have no other alternative. So
I think that's pretty awesome. Is something like that accessible to parents in the community? Because I wonder if they, know these signs. Or I'm just wondering if it's something that could just be put out in information shared.
Yeah.
Because they may not know what is it that they're seeing.
Yeah.
Not only with their kids, but maybe with their kids' friends.
Yeah.
So it just sounds like a really powerful tool to make folks aware of
What to look
certain
for,
behavior, what to look for.
Yep. I just met
Especially when they're saying that our students are struggling.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's just, everyone's struggling with
But it's
mental
what-
health issues, but
it's what to
definitely
look for, yeah.
students, young folks.
Yeah, I just met with Chief Frank today. We're going to send our final version to her so she can take a look at it, because you really want, part of supporting these kids is making sure you have all the data from all different stakeholders, right? Who know things, and compiling that so that you can really address the issue. And the police often know things, right? So she's going to look at the assessment as well. But yeah, can certainly share that out so people can see what's on it.
Elizabeth, and then Davis.
Thank you. And I apologize for now having my camera off and having my nephew from 25 years ago on screen, but my internet is unstable. Having said that, I would really like to know more about the behavioral threat assessment tool, because I have been hearing from all over the state that schools all over the place are looking for it. Teachers all over the place are looking for it. And there isn't anything that's standardized and that feels accessible by an everyday teacher without being, without being exposing, if it's more than if you see something, say something. It's a lot more than if you see something, say something. So if there are specific criteria, I'd love to know what they are so that I can at least share them with other people I know, because I'm totally unaware of any standardized threat assessment tool.
Yeah, this came, I'm not going to remember the presenter's name, Elizabeth, but it's the tool that came from her, so, and her company, and I can get it to you for sure, so we can.
Thank you, because actually the state's healthcare advocate has asked me for it, and I don't know what to tell him, because
yeah, I'll get it to you. We were looking at it and making it our own WSESU behavior threat assessment, and some of it is, when you hear a student say, I'm going to hurt somebody, I mean, you have to go through the assessment to see if it's a credible threat, and it collects information about a particular student. So,
Can you get that to other board members?
oh yeah, I can
would
send it
like
to all the board
yeah,
members. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Good conference, I have to say.
And Davis.
Yeah, and maybe this was also a part of the threat assessment conversation, but if we are going to be initiating some, dialogue with parents about this and sharing this tool around, has there been any discussion of sharing safe storage guidelines? I know that's safe storage of firearms in the home. I think it's sort of related to this conversation. The reality is that a lot of homes that kids live in have firearms in them. And a really simple way to, keep people safe is to make sure that we're communicating some safe storage guidelines that, a lot of folks probably do it already, but it's never a bad thing to bring up. So maybe in tandem with this conversation, that could be something we consider as well.
Yeah, and it is part of, it's not a campaign for that, but part of when we hear something, we do check in with the police, and they do speak to the homeowners and ask about access to guns. So it is part of the whole process that we go through. But it's not proactive, Davis, and I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm thinking is if we are kind of being proactive and sharing this tool and really starting a community dialogue about this, I think that could be beneficial to it as well, because it's never bad advice for firearm owners to hear, is just how to keep things safe if you have children in the home.
Okay. Under culture and student wellness, just a few things to keep you in the know. We did, Katie, Angie, and I worked on the Act 112 grant. It has been submitted. We worked with the directors from BTG and HCRS on that grant, and our focus will be in providing additional supports in our summer academy program for the next 2 summers. Yes.
What is Act 112?
It has to do with mental health supports.
Okay.
For students and staff, I believe.
Just students.
A student. Oh, Katie, you're here. Okay, just student.
Nice voice.
We've submitted it. We'll let you know what we hear back. Just to keep you updated on the equity audit, the deadline for survey responses was November 18th. We extended it by a week as we hadn't had the response we'd hoped for. So we did have, it did go out again. We had over 100 staff, over 200 community members, some high school students, but that was as of November 7th. So we're hoping, I haven't heard back from them yet on the total. But the next step will be focus groups. Some exciting news. 4 of our lead learners were accepted to the next Waddington Leadership Cohort. They will start in the spring. That's Kate, Sergio, Colleen, and Brian, which is great leadership training. Yes. And we have, we decided as administrative team that we would send out our lead learner surveys to our staff to check on how we're doing. And then we're going to look at that data and set some actions based on the data we receive from staff. So that's culture and student wellness. Just to let you know, the Southeast superintendents are going to be holding a legislative breakfast, which is an annual practice. And the topics for discussion at that breakfast will be facilities and PCBs, which is a hot topic across the state, mental health, CTE, which is career and tech ed programs, academic catch-up, and funding of religious schools with public dollars. So those are the things that we're going to be advocating about with our legislatures.
Okay, great.
And that would be December 9th. Quick other items, just so you know, our curriculum pilots, we are in the thick of our Eureka Squared Math program pilot. And we ended up with some carryover funds, title carryover funds. And based on what we're hearing from staff, which is that they really need an ELA program, we're going to pilot one or two, depending on committee with those funds. I have been discovering that we lack protocols for many of our policies, and so that is on my to-do list. I am working on protocols for the policies that we have in place, and you'll have access to those. And so will the community. We'll put them up on the website when they're finished. COVID numbers are pretty low still, relatively speaking. Knock on wood. So I just wanted to keep you in the know on that, where things are going okay in that realm. And just 2 quick other items before I turn it over to Brittany. We have had a request from a student. Is the WSESU board interested in having student reps? And we talked about it at the Mount Scottney board meeting. I could not find a policy on it.
Right, we were for younger students. Maybe.
We do have a plan for Mount Scottney school board student reps on the board, and a process for that, and an application that the kids can fill out. But and you know, Hudson brought this up. He was wondering if the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Board is interested in having student reps, and if so, what should the process be? So we can think about it and take action on it next month.
Yeah.
Put it on the agenda for that. And then the last question is, we've been talking, brainstorming, how do we retain our staff? How do we keep our teachers? And so one idea was, is it feasible for staff who work in our SU that don't live in our towns or live in a town that they don't, in a school that they don't teach at? I did not say that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Is it worth exploring having a benefit? And it sounds like it would be a benefit, allowing them to bring their own children to the school that they work at. And I see Bill has some thoughts beside his face. It is a question. I'm happy to look into it if the board would like me to do that, or if not, if the board does not.
I just wanted to, before Bill responds, there will be tomorrow at ADS, there will be vaccine clinic at Albert Bridge.
There's one in Windsor.
Is that rescue, right?
Yeah, it just went out.
Okay. Yeah, I know the one in Windsor.
I don't know about the one
The
at
one in-
Albert Bridge.
At ABS, okay, so maybe I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong, Rebecca. There is one at Albert Bridge tomorrow. But I don't know the specific time, unfortunately, off the top of my head. I'll look it up. Hold on.
30 to 6
3:30 to 6 at Albert Bridge, okay.
at Albert Bridge.
Windsor's? Do you have Windsor's?
Windsor's is,
I think that was on my calendar.
I've got it here. Windsor's,
Windsor is Saturday
The
at
third.
9 to 11:30.
it looks like the flyer says 12:03 and 12:17. For
Yes, and I
Windsor,
think
yeah.
it was scheduled for both.
Okay, 9
Because
to
I
11:30.
remember, yeah, it's also for, on the 17th from 9 to.
We need to keep
Yep, we need to keep moving.
moving with.
So we can think about that as well and come back
Okay,
to it.
yeah.
But there will be some legalities around it that need to be explored if we want to go forward with that. All right, I'm turning over to Brittany.
Are you gonna present?
I'm gonna try. Share this to, hold on. Come on. There we go. Must be a lot of data in there. Took a while to load.
Charts. There's a lot of charts in there. All right, so we'll get started if you want to move to the first slide there, Christine. So last year we had been tracking attendance rates, so the average absent per day by school. So this chart compares September to September, October to October. And it is not, it's all excused and unexcused. So we were just trying to, get kids to school, right? So it's a little bit all over the map. You can see HES is actually, they're kind of trending in the wrong direction because you want to see those numbers lower. And the other schools are a little bit all over the place, but for the most part doing slightly better than the previous year. And stop me at any time if you have questions.
Although I do want to back up on that because I think that society-wise, sending your kids to school sick is not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like that October number, I remember that week and
Yeah.
these kids were sick.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
They were better
interesting to
off
see.
not in school.
Like hopefully we see that as COVID numbers are kind of going down and maybe immunities start to, improve a little bit because that, I think we all know the last couple of years has had a major effect on just what we've been exposed to. So it'll be interesting to see how those numbers.
Well, and also how
fluctuate.
they fluctuate seasonally because
Yeah.
like that October was flu in Hartland.
Yeah, yep.
And we're gonna get that anyway.
Yeah.
We're always gonna have that. And so I think to me, it's better to see that kids are actually staying home.
Yeah, and ABS, November got hit
Mhm.
with.
Yeah.
the stuff
Yeah, you can
where-
usually relate it to something.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
and as long as we can relate it to something, I think when you start to see these numbers and you can't relate it to, oh yeah, that was a flu season, then we want to maybe look at that a little bit deeper.
I remember us having a goal of like 4% for absences, and I feel like that may be an outdated goal.
It
in
might be.
That might have been the old way of thinking where you just gave your kid Advil and sent them out the door.
And that came from comparing, years past what the goal was. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. It
So I just want to
probably
be
is.
careful on
Yeah.
that.
I didn't put the goal on there this time. It was just a matter of tracking, hopefully we're seeing either consistency or that it's going down.
Have you looked at chronically absentee students?
I have the ability to do that. I did not do that in this one, but I can run those numbers. We run those for like MTSS meetings and things along those lines. We have a flag of, typically they're flagged at like eight absences unexcused. And I even flag them at 8 with both so that just in case you have people who are being excused frequently and maybe, because it's just a phone call from a parent. Are they excused or not?
I just, last week I finished a 10-year analysis of those numbers, and it's amazing how much they correlate with students with disabilities.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
Direct correlation, Bill, a direct correlation. So you're more likely to have chronic absenteeism if you have an IEP.
Or 504.
Mhm.
So it's just the student with disability.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right, so this year, well, last year I had mentioned that we were going to be tracking behavior consistently across the SU. We're using a new system that is actually an add-on into PowerSchool, so it's tracked directly to PowerSchool. We were able to customize how we're collecting the data. The numbers are really, really hard to see on here, and I apologize for that. But one thing that we'll want to track over the next, several months is consistency, because being that it's a new system, how we're reporting it, making sure we're calibrating across the SU. So I wouldn't necessarily say that these numbers are completely accurate at this point in time, because it's a brand new system. So we're still working some of those things out. But hopefully as we start to do it more consistently and the staff get more training in terms of reporting, that we'll start to see consistency and be able to set some real solid goals around proactive interventions for some of these.
But it is the same system in all our schools.
Yes.
Which is pretty exciting.
Yes.
That's good, it's important.
And it's interesting that there are some grades that really stand out.
There is, yeah.
Elizabeth?
Thank you. I don't really understand what you mean by behavior data. Can you please tell me what this is measuring? Thank you.
Yeah, so this is measuring any time a student has some sort of issue that was not easily managed within the classroom. So if it's as simple as a student is being a little disruptive and the teacher maybe moves their seat, right? That's a typical thing that you would do. You're not going to log that sort of thing. However, if it becomes something that becomes extremely disruptive to the learning environment, that's something that we want to start monitoring, because you may want to put something in place to decrease that behavior over time. The other thing that this is measuring is any sort of major behavior. So it might be threats or, drugs or, whatever the major behaviors might be. So it's measuring, we can run suspension data, we can run administrative responses. There's a variety of different things and ways that you can run the data. So I do PowerPoint presentations for every school, and they get those. I did one in October, so they got 2 months worth of data where it just kind of drilled down into all of their data, and they're using those to set goals for how to address some of that in their schools.
So is this all of the data combined? Or,
Yeah, this is the entire SU. So every time a behavior incident was logged,
any behavior incident is in this number.
Yes.
As long as they-
For the entire SU.
Yeah, that
Is
was
there
kind
any
of
way to
my-
get a breakdown of this?
Yes, there is. If you could just tell me what kind of breakdown you would like, as long as I can maintain, confidentiality, obviously, then I can give you that report.
Okay, thank you, Brittany.
So what I'm hearing is that if we break this into a 3-tier system, these are tier 2 and tier 3 behaviors?
These behaviors?
Yes.
Yeah,
Not
basically.
necessarily tier 1 in which
Right.
you would.
Universal, you're just responding basically.
Right.
They become tier 2 when they're chronic, when it's something that is not a typical teacher
Right.
addressing the behavior is not addressing it.
Or if it's something that's repeated.
Repeated over time.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
so
basically I
can
break
those
it down. You have universal tier 1, you have majors,
Mhm.
tier 2, and then state reported events would be tier 3.
Yes. Yep, and I can run a report and get it to Christine that breaks out minors versus majors, if you're interested in that number, in those numbers, or, if you wanted it by school district, I could do that as well.
Yeah, well, it's really hard to sort of separate the.
Yeah.
that-
Brittany, another thing. Sorry, another thing that would be really helpful to know is, like, for this 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, the middle school level, how many kids is that compared to the 9th and 10th grade? Because I think the proportion is really different.
Yep, it could be. I mean, the numbers, if you compare by grade level, yeah, we can run those and do percentages. I do those for each school when I run their data reports. They can see number of students compared by each grade level at their school, so you can see that number. I didn't do it here. This is the first report that I've run SU-wide, because it does drill down in a lot of different ways. I could do the whole presentation on it. And also because I'm not totally confident in its accuracy yet, because it's not calibrated like the way we would like it across the SU yet.
Have you calibrated location, those types of things?
Those are calibrated
Time.
within the system, yes, but I think there's can be a lot of ambiguity between one person saying, I consider that disrespect and I don't, I'm going to log that behavior versus somebody else saying, this is disrespect, but I can handle it on my own. You know what I mean? It's just, there's a lot of that going on right now. And so it's just something that we're going to keep building on.
And I know that you probably would be able to do this, Christine, at some point, but I'd love to also see the other side, and that is how our behavior is being responded to.
Yeah.
So, what's being, what I mean, what's being, just to kind of get a sense.
Yep. And we run those by
by
school district too, so they can see how often it's by first response, because you can put multiple in. So you might contact a parent, you might, ask for support, you might, whatever. So whatever those responses are, and you can break them down by that as well. So we can see the number of times a student is being, removed from a classroom versus the number of times it's being managed in a different way, for example.
So you're talking about resolution.
Yeah.
Response, well, it depends on the system. Response tends to, was there a response, meaning was there a physical response? A seclusion?
How did the teacher manage that behavior? How did they respond to it? Yeah. And then there's administrator actions, which are typically more of the major things. Usually that's more of a major behavior.
Elizabeth?
Thank you, Amy. Brittany, is there any data on the teachers who are reporting? Like we've talked on our board, we've talked a couple of times about, kind of taking a look at teachers who report a lot. Is it because of the teacher or the students or the makeup of the classroom or both? Or, if we're gonna have data like this, we should really, try to talk through it, including, what other elements might be causing it.
Yeah, it collects that data as well. And again, those are reported out to the teams within each building. So, I had a data meeting, behavior data meeting. It was the SEIs, it was the school administrator, the school counselor, and typically the interventionist. And we met together and we reviewed all of the data. And that's part of that. Yep.
Right.
Because there's no point in collecting it if you're not going to do something.
Right.
Right.
It's a collective, we look at all of the factors, not just one or two, it's all of them. And part of doing that, I think too, helps highlight some of the, we don't report that behavior in this room. It's like, well, we should, because we're reporting it in this room. So let's make sure.
Exactly.
And so those meetings are going to consistently happen throughout the year. And I think that will help a lot with our calibration to make sure we're all, and because I'm attending all of those, I can point out the differences between the buildings as well.
Well, I'd like to point out, I think Christine alluded to this, the excitement of it's all the same system. That is bigger than you can imagine.
Huge.
Right.
Yeah.
Elizabeth?
Thank you. Sorry, I wish I was in the room with you. I apologize for raising my hand, but I would really love, Brittany, to hear a report on those meetings. I don't feel like this bar graph really does all that much for my understanding of the behavior, but I'd really love to know what the outcome of those meetings is.
So, I think that would be good, Elizabeth. On the other hand, though,
I mean,
a lot of the stuff that you've been asking about is not appropriate for an open meeting.
I know, that's fine. That's fine. I don't find any meaning in this bar graph at all.
Yeah, I don't think there is as a first paragraph. I think the really important thing is, one, it's a system that is used universally. And two, it's the work to go forward to then have those discussions about what does X mean, what does Y mean, and how can we clean the data stream up so that we can get meaning out of it. But you're absolutely right. There's other ways to break it down based upon building, based upon teacher level, based upon BIPOC, based upon, free and reduced, location. Those are all the sort of discussions and that will happen.
And because it's all in Power School, it's all connected.
Right.
Which is really fantastic. So it's really easy. I don't have to export this data into another system to try to find all of that information. I think the value really comes down to how are the individual schools going to be using that information. I think over time, where the board will probably want to report, which is what I did last year, is what is our state reporting looking like? What is the suspension data going to be looking like at the end of the year compared to last year, and those kinds of things. And this system will collect that information as well. Hazing, harassment, and bullying cases, that's all going to be reported in here too. And those are kinds of the things that I think the board would like to hear about.
But I do agree with Elizabeth. Things like, for example, I'll use Dothenburg because that's sort of one example, is that they gathered the data, they found out that a lot of incidents were happening at this time in these locations, and these were the steps they took. I think maybe that's what Elizabeth is.
Yeah, that was another question was going to be whether the system records what tools were used and then records what, the data following use of particular tools. That might be too much of a social experiment though.
Yeah, that it does not do. That would be more like once you use the data to develop an intervention plan, how we're tracking that. And we actually have a training coming up for our social emotional interventionists across the SU to use our Panorama system, which is the social emotional learning survey that we're doing. So I think that has some of that capability to do more of the intervention side of things. But to Bill's point, some of the information that you were talking about, I wonder if that would be more appropriate at the individual school board meetings. So a Mount Escutney one, a Weathersfield, and I can get that information gathered for those board meetings.
But that's the type of thing that would be good for any board to hear, to see what sort of steps different buildings are taking, sort of a pat yourself on the back. This is what we found, this is what we did, and that data,
working.
action, results.
Right, yeah, what's working?
Thank you.
All right, ready?
We need to keep
Move on.
moving, yes.
Okay, so our TMP data, this is the progress rate data. I reported on this last year. The progress rate, an average progress rate is 1 nationally. So if you're at 1, you are progressing at the rate that is expected. So our data is pretty consistently just above or just at that 1 range, other than the 8th grade math did not have the progression that we would expect in math. But overall, I think these are really good numbers. Last year, when I reported that, the progress rates were actually extremely elevated. And I think we were able to make some general assumptions that was because we were consistently in school during those COVID years when other schools were not, which would make sense, and why we progressed at a faster rate.
What is up with the 8th grade math?
Don't know. It's definitely something we're going to be looking into.
TMP?
No, they did, and it's not. It just means that
Nothing. There's no growth.
yeah, it was low. And this is just our fall data. So hopefully
You expect a decrease in the fall, but comparatively, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's very
Oh,
interesting.
that's right, because TMP starts you back at 0.
For that grade level.
Right.
That's the type of data I would expect to see in sixth grade because of the change in the type of standards that are required in sixth grade.
Yeah, we're looking at it, which is fantastic. You know, we get all the data reports out to our principals and we're looking at it with our MTSS teams, which is great. And I think part of some of the math things in the ELA, you know, we're using this data towards figuring out what are we going to do for curriculum moving forward, because we need to.
Our algebra kids aren't doing enough. Yeah.
That's right.
That was
right.
going to be my
knocked
question.
off.
Yeah, and that was a heavy, for some schools, that was a large amount too. Like Heartland had quite a few, I believe, that were in the.
Heartland is like more than half class.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Okay.
Okay.
We have a question from Diana Day.
Thank you. As the middle level math teacher at Weathersfield, I just wanted to address the 8th grade comment for the fall track my progress. If you, which I can, if you go back in and look at the students' questions, a lot of the student questions in 8th grade are around square roots, cube roots. You know, the square root of 80 is between which of these two numbers, those sorts of things. And we at Weathersfield, because of Eureka and the plan that we follow, the students haven't been exposed to that. So I noticed, for instance, like I reviewed it with a few of my students, like 4 or 5 questions were around the square root. And so they were unsure on how to do that. And that's not the answer to the end all be all, but I just wanted to let the board members here and any audience members that are questioning that about 8th grade.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you.
So the next two are just the basic data from our first round of TMP, where our students fell by grade level. The comparative data from last year to this year is on our data dashboard, which is on the website. So you can always take a look on there. It has all of the information for the most of the classes go back all the way to the fall of last year. So you can compare all the way across. But again, we're diving into all of this data frequently with our teams. So our ELA, here's our F&P data. This, I did put the comparative data. This is grades 1 through 4.
And
F&P, Fontes and Pinella is the reading assessment we're using. And one important thing to note with both Track My Progress and F&P is we are looking at, we will be piloting the Renaissance Star this year. We have found that Track My Progress has been great for a very long time. However, we're using data more and we need more of it. And Renaissance is a computer adaptive assessment. So it's just one thing that we're looking at. We're also piloting the MAP growth assessment, MIWA MAP growth in 9th and 10th grade. And both of these assessments have aligned in the past really well with SBAC results.
And they allow us to progress monitor.
And they allow us to progress monitor. F&P is not aligned with the science of reading, so that's the other thing that we really need a different measure for that. So Renaissance Star, as well as some of the other larger assessments, they have what's called curriculum-based measures, which are you can get like drops in the bucket more consistently. So you give your overall screener and then you can dive into that data a little bit more versus F&P, you read a story, you track, it's a running record and you track it and you find their level. The CBMs are looking more at the individual components of reading or the individual components of math and getting more information on those. So we're pretty excited about that. That'll be this next round of assessments.
The joy of STAR.
You want to talk about it sometime?
Well, I manage it.
Yeah.
And there's some good parts and not so good parts. But
Like every assessment, right?
Yeah.
But certainly, I think it'll be really exciting to look into that. So I'm sure you're well aware of this, Bill, but the Cognia is going to be the new program running our state assessment. Moving forward this year, we have bits and pieces of information about it. So SBACs will no longer be a thing. However, it's not going away because we're going to have Cognia. Some of the things that we've been told by the state is the assessment length will be slightly shorter. We don't know how much shorter. That they really looked at it through an equity lens when developing the assessment. and that the interface will be updated for students. So hopefully navigation will be significantly easier.
Other than that, we know nothing.
We know
We'll
nothing.
keep you posted when we know.
Yeah, there's supposed to be training coming up here pretty soon for district administrators, so we'll find out.
I
It's an
just
open
hope that whatever, as we're, because I know the assessments are really important, but that we keep our parents in the loop, and because we want them to understand what is it that we're talking about. I mean, I can get lost easily as you're running, using all these acronyms, and I'm like, I know that one, oh, I don't know that one. And I'm just wondering how, on top of this, some of our parents are, and I think it's really important to like really keep them in the loop and make this language available, make it so that they
Yeah, one thing that we did this year is, we, all teachers were to talk about Track My Progress and FMP at the conferences, which we'll do again coming up, because you don't want to send home a score report that means, nothing. And it's only a very, very small picture of what who our students are and how they're performing. So we didn't want it to be, the sole focus, but we are sharing that information.
Did you get the invite to the assessment office hours on Wednesday?
Yes, I did. I'll be there.
You'll see each
It'll
other.
be great. So frontline professional development is something that we have rolled out as of last year. So we used it for the first time on October 7th. We have a half day, and these are the opportunities that we offered for staff. They went directly into frontline. They signed up for their choice that they wanted to do. We ran our rosters. And then they went back in at the end, and they were able to complete their exit ticket all in there and get their certificate. And I think all in all, it went really, really well. So we're on our second round moving forward for December 5th. And yeah, I think it's
Big
going
thank
well
you to
so far.
Brittany for all the back work.
Yeah.
That goes into that. It's a lot.
Setting up systems is very labor intensive.
So another super small one, but this one, Christine and Angie asked me to put on, this is the middle level survey data, that with the question being, do you feel like you have control over what or how you are learning? And this is broken down by school district.
And
What
the
are
yellow is
things?
sometimes,
Okay.
and red is no, and blue is yes. And we will be giving this survey out again in January and in the spring to see if we're making progress in giving kids some more agency and autonomy. So.
That was it.
And that is that's your last one?
That's it. Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
So-
Thank you.
That was a lot,
That
but-
was a wealth of information. Thanks.
All right, so I'm going to stop sharing. And Larry, are you going to need to share?
No, unless there's questions.
Okay.
I think we moved it under items for action, but Lori left it under discussion.
It's in both.
Oh.
If there's any discussion, and then there's an
She
item.
forgot to take it out.
Yeah.
Unless there's discussion.
Is there any on the budget, the SU budget?
Let's see, budget, I can give you the numbers, although you have them. But the total is 12,137,328. Special ed is up 8.22%. Admin and operations is up 3.32%. The total of 11.55%. Some of that is due to the negotiated contract, where we did give our support staff a significant boost, which they deserved, and more so. So I can't remember the exact breakdown of what that was, but it was a large chunk of that increase is attributed to that.
It was front loaded as well.
Yeah.
So. But as Katie's pointed out, we get that front loaded big jump, and then the next year, of course, they still have the big jump
Right.
plus.
So what was that total?
12,137,328.
So we do have those numbers in here?
They're all in the portal, I believe.
I sent them out October 8th, I think.
Yeah.
And they are in the portal as well, right, Larry?
They were on the same day I sent the emails, they were up on the
Yeah.
website and the portal.
Probably in the October.
The October meeting.
I'm imagining they're in October.
And the presentation was in November, which I put in the portal.
We did have a great, Larry led the budget process, and we had a budget committee in place. They met 3-4 times, they met
I believe
4 times in the process of developing the budget. So we're ready for questions if you have any.
Anne Marie.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I've been kind of like, I missed last meeting, and I talked to Larry a bit, kind of behind the scenes as far as, Weathersfield's new number, which is really scary. It kind of made me physically ill when I saw it. I don't know how, with those numbers, we're going to get a budget passed this year in Weathersfield. That's just what I got to let you guys know. I don't know how I'm going to get a budget passed this year.
And maybe, Larry, do you want to speak to why Weathersfield was up more than the other districts?
Yeah, I did a analysis, and basically, it's sort of what I said to in the SU budget committee. Jamie is the Weathersfield board representative. I think it was the first meeting. I said it's kind of a good news, bad news thing. And the good news is their equalized pupil went up relative to the other 2 districts. Bad news is their equalized pupil went up relative to the other 2 districts as far as that's how we break out the assessment. We base it on equalized pupil, except for food service. As you remember, last year, the board decided to change it to total students in the buildings. And, but still the same, it wouldn't matter as far as that's concerned, because it still went up. So Weathersfield's enrollment went up, and it went bigger than its share between the other 2 districts. So for example, the difference between, so I ran an analysis that basically said, let's assume enrollment was flat among all the towns and all the districts. And if that were the case, then their total SU assessment increase would have been 215,000 rather than 321,000. So essentially, it's a third. So they can account for that's the bad news, right? The third of their difference in the assessment is entirely based because their enrollment went up. And Heartland's went down a small amount, and Mount Spence went down a small amount. But it's like a pie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Weathersfield took up most of that pie because there's equalized people went up. It's not just that it goes up, it has to go up in relative to the other towns. So, for example, last year, Heartland's was 32.95. This year's Heartland's 32.15. Now, Scotty was 44.93. This year's 44.4. So if you add up those 2 percentages, roughly like 1.2%, and that's almost exactly what Weathersfield went up from 22.12 to 23.4.
But that's related to the fact that the number of students.
Exactly. Yeah, they went from, in fiscal year 22, equalized pupils 311.64 to 326.88. Mount Spence went down from 633.03 to 618.88, and Heartland went down from 464.31 to 448.06. So Heartland lost a few kids, Mount Spence lost a few kids, and Weathersfield gained kids. If Weathersfield had lost kids the same ratio, it would have been about a third less than what it is today, as far as the assessment is concerned. And again, from an assessment standpoint, since we're on the subject, ECP is up 25%, admin and ops, non-special ed at the central office is 2.81%, special ed is 21.38 up, in food service assessments up 2.47. So for example, Heartland, they actually paid less, 4,000 less for food this year than last year.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Well,
And the price of everything is going up.
So that will be an item for action when we get there. Were there any other comments? And Anne Marie, I don't know. I feel sympathy. I feel your pain. No other comments? We will move on to middle school parenting support sessions. We have about 5 minutes allotted for that.
Yep, and I can share what I've done. And Elizabeth, you can feel free to chime in. This was an idea brought up to engage our middle school parents in just discussion, support conversations. So I did meet with MAP, Mount-Escotney Prevention Practice, Courtney Kegg, Mima Roberts, and Melanie Sheehan. They are really excited about partnering with the school to run some discussion circles, parenting circles. And we developed a quick survey as a next step to send out to middle school parents to gain interest as a follow-up. So, eventually those sessions may turn into discussions that are kind of led by what parents are struggling with, but might lead into discussions about things that might prevent other things in the future.
Right, yeah.
So I'm certainly happy to get that survey out. I don't know if Elizabeth, if you wanted to share any other thoughts around those parenting circles?
I think the survey looks great, and I appreciate the effort to put it together. And I don't know. I guess collecting the answers from the survey is the next step, and then I think it would be a good idea to, whatever the parenting circle includes, to make sure that we have childcare available.
Okay. Then I'm happy to get that sent out to middle school parents and bring back what we learned. All right. Saved a couple minutes there, Amy.
Yeah. Hey.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next, the hiring/employment policy.
Well, once again, Beth and I have not met, but I have it blocked out for several hours tomorrow. So I'm so sorry, but I will. It absolutely, positively will be ready to go by our December meeting. And as a placeholder, instead, I'd like to report out on the No Small Matter project, which I received. I sent out a very excited email telling all of you that I received grant money from the Byrne Foundation to fund the screening of the movie, which will, from what I understand, take place at the end of the first week of January. So the wheels are actually turning on it, which is pretty great.
Great, thank you. Very cool. Thank you, Angie.
She's got
got migraine.
She's got
I need to go. Too much computer time
I'm
today.
so sorry.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah, good night. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will look forward to hearing more updates on that, Elizabeth. Thank you. Let's see, Listen Up film.
So I was, had a meeting with Sarah Lowry. She was at I think she was one of the women at the conference. And we were gonna meet last week and she was sick, so we have rescheduled. So I have not chatted with her about, on the recommendations for rollout of the film. Listen Up, how we go about doing that, in school and within the community, whether we do bits at a time and have discussion, or if we do the whole thing and have discussion, we do it in school first and then in the community following that. So I am open to your suggestions and I'm happy to let you know when the rescheduled meeting is with Sarah, if anybody wants to join.
Okay.
But
I think I would like to, depending on when
it is.
but
And I can try to
yeah.
work around your schedule too, Amy. I've emailed her back. She was sick, so didn't get back to me for a bit, which we totally understand. So we haven't picked the follow-up date yet, but I'll loop you in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to be part 2, Christine.
Okay, you got it. That'd be great.
Okay, now we go into policy review and readings. We have first reading on substitute teachers.
I shared out a change draft to people and it basically was just making the language in this draft match what's in the actual Vermont School Board Association. For example, they, within the Vismut policy, it talks about consecutive student days, and in this policy, it had two different, talked about calendar days, consecutive calendar days, which is misleading because that makes it sound like it's just 30 days. And then I cleaned up some other stuff. I don't know.
Where did you share that?
I just, who did I share it with? I shared it in a link in an email about this agenda. So it's in an email.
Okay. Is Lori on that email, Bill?
I believe so, yes. And I can just share it again.
Okay.
And another change I made in mine was that short-term substitute teachers will be paid wages as determined by the school board, because that's what we do now. And the superintendent may make distinction in pay level based on the need and their lessons, assets for court student progress, length of service, and credentials.
So we'll just bring it back in the second read next
Yeah.
time? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Next, we have, this is a third reading on restraint and seclusion policy, and there are procedures that came with it. Are there any
Yes.
further comments on this?
I think the policy looks good. One piece in the procedure is it lays out a lot of timeline, except for when the superintendent should be contacted. There's no time frame. And some of the things in the list, like a death, seems pretty immediate. Might be good to put a timeline for those things.
Immediately?
So like immediately, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the procedure is good as well. It's just that seems to be a a missed piece because all the other steps, there is a timeline to communicate. And that's the only thing that's missing.
Is that part though, Bill, because it has subsequent to a restraint or seclusion, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, and the superintendent piece comes under 4, which says the principal or his, her designee must inform the parent as soon as possible by verbal or electronic means, but no later than the end of the school day. Maybe it doesn't seem connected, but at first I thought it was connected. Do you know?
But the superintendent and his, her designee must be notified if there is one of the following.
Right, I don't think it's connected to 4.
It's not, no.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so.
So as a superintendent, would you want to be informed within those 24 hours as a parent?
Absolutely, as soon as possible.
So you would know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I?
Katie?
The way the form is written, and I think we can clean this up, is the 24 hours is when all of those things need to, like the superintendent has to be notified. It's a checklist. So I think the way we have that formatted looks odd, but the way it is in the form is when those forms are filled out, you're checking off that, and it all needs to happen within the 24 hours of, but within the school, within the end of the school day, rather, not the 24 hours, sorry, within that school day. So we can go back and just realign that. So, because it is definitely within that school day that the superintendent or designee is informed of any restraint or seclusion, including anything egregious. Because it's within 3 days that we have to notify the AOE if it meets some of that criteria as well. I think it's the way our procedures it looks a little odd.
Yeah, so just a question, number 3, it is the 4,500 report. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
So if that were to be written, it needs to be completed by the end of the day and submitted to the school administrator, director of student support services, and the superintendent?
And the superintendent being, if it meets the criteria to inform the superintendent. They don't get, Christine doesn't get all of them, only the ones that rise to that level. But I think that in our attempt to align our form with the procedure, we lost something in translation in terms of that. So it is definitely, like when I get them that Christine needs to be informed of, it's checked off, and that's within the end of the school day.
So as I look at the list, is that 1, 2, 3, 4 are all the things that have to happen. And then is what's included in 4? Because you then have a space in the written notice. This may just be a formatting thing.
Yeah, it is
Okay.
more of the formatting.
Okay.
Yeah. We can pull the AOE's forms have changed slightly because now they've gone electronic, and the old ones were really not, look like ditto copies, so they weren't very clear. But the written notice has to happen under 4, and the designee, superintendent or designee must be notified. That's also within the formatting piece of by the end of the school day. And then it's the commissioner of ed is within 3 school days. So the formatting should be really clear. This block of things, 1, 2, 3, 4, number 5 could be the superintendent numbering. That all needs to be within those, within that school day. If that makes sense. And then the next one being number 6, in effect, the AOE is notified actually within the 3 school days. Of anything beyond that, because that's what it is in practice.
Okay, thank you.
So Katie and I will work on that, cleaning that up. We can certainly vote on the policy, you don't have to vote on the procedures. That's the policy.
Okay. Will people feel comfortable on the policy today?
I really appreciate the definition of guiding escort.
Trying to make it really, really clear.
Well, that wasn't clear in the past.
Yeah.
So I think it's important.
No, I am, to answer your question, yeah, I'd be comfortable with the policy.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Can I ask a couple
Oh,
questions?
Elizabeth, yeah, sorry.
I thought we were going to ask, or I thought we were going to include having a certain percentage of the staff be trained in de-escalation as part of the policy.
We talked about something, I don't know if it was the policy itself. But it was a certain amount of people trained.
Well, we talked about whether there should be a designated number at the building or whether there should be a percent, and we decided that having a percent would be better. Then we talked about whether it should be part of the policy or part of the procedures. Katie said that it is already in practice, and I just want to have it actually be in policy so that when we all die,
It's still there.
Where when we all throw our hands and say I quit, that it's still there. And the other one was I did not see, and I may just have been reading it on my phone instead of on the computer, but I'd like to have there be, at least in the procedure, a report out to the board. I think we said last time every 6 months and not just annually, didn't we? And then Katie said that the incidence is so rare that it doesn't make sense to do it every 6 months. But the report out to the board isn't actually, for my reading, wasn't on the procedure doc.
It's on the,
No.
it's on the policy.
Yes.
That it says report annually.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Section 4.
Yeah,
And the superintendent shall ensure the appropriate staff are provided training by program recommended by the blah, 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 blah. That is where we would put in a percent if we wanted it under section 4 of the policy.
So, and where we left it last time was that I don't have an answer for that question. I don't know what would be appropriate. And you, Christine, and Amy, and Katie were going to talk about what would be an appropriate number, everything considered.
I don't think we landed on a number. I can say as we've been, what we have done is each year discuss it with the building principals and look at who our current staff is trained, what our student needs are at the time, and who should be trained. I will say that we cautiously determine which staff should have the full training because it was part of why we took such a different approach this year, so that, which including having 6 trainers, so that we're implementing and have oversight at each building for implementation and fidelity, because it's something that we want the staff that are going to be trained in this to have enough support and be a tight group and not a large group. So I don't know. We did not, Christine and I did not get to have a conversation about how many, what a percentage would be. For example, Albert Bridge has, it's either 5 or 6 people off. I know it's at least 5, it may be 6 for that building, because they had a core group of staff. And the Windsor School again has, I think we're at 12 or 13 individuals. I don't know how to come up with a percentage. I guess that would be if we can have a little bit of time to do that.
I want to throw out a suggestion, Katie. I understand where Elizabeth's coming from, and I think she has a really good point. I think one of the issues is the fact that when it involves staff and putting in even a percent, I think it's a much larger discussion around, contract negotiations, things like that. I'm more comfortable right now passing it this as is to get it in the books and then investigate further down the line. And if we come up with a way to guarantee a certain number of staff, then to move forward to put it into the
Amend the policy.
Amend the policy. I think right now, getting that number and making that commitment today or even this school year is going to be really difficult.
I appreciate that. And just, if it's okay to piggyback, the factors that go into determining who can be, are they physically able to, are they willing to? We don't force anybody unless it's necessarily part of their job upon hire, saying that they have to do this. There's a lot of factors in when we're asking individuals to be trained in something that requires them to physically intervene with students safely. So I appreciate the time.
I think the whole de-escalation training is a separate discussion. I think everyone should have that.
My concern lies with COVID. And while we may be out of COVID now, we have had a tremendous number of teachers be absent from our various schools. So if only a certain number of people are qualified to do this in a legally sanctioned way, if all of those people happen to be absent on a given day, then where are we? That's
I understand that. Absolutely, Elizabeth. My experience, though, in the fact that in which I was assigned to be that person in a building because I was physically able, and the classroom teachers weren't physically able. And so this isn't something in which you could just train anybody. It's a very complicated matter. And getting those qualified individuals, and qualified doesn't just mean that they have taken the training, but those who can actually do the restraint. I mean, there's an emotional piece to it.
Yeah,
there's a physical piece to it. There is a personality piece to it. Mm-hmm. And so,
I just wonder, Katie, are staff compensated for this role?
They are not, if it's part of if they're a BI level or a classroom teacher, they're not compensated for this. For the training, yes, they were compensated for any time beyond their contracted hours. But in terms of if they employ these techniques at some point, they are not compensated for doing so. The one exception is if you are a support staff member who is continually working with a student and you're not paid at a BI level and that you're doing any sort of regular physical intervention, which I'll go back to, this is not commonplace at all in our SU, that there's a stipend for that per our contract. But I think all of the factors that go into it, we are, and I'll go back to that cautious piece. De-escalation techniques alone are one thing. De-escalation techniques with restraint and seclusion training is very different, or it's on the continuum of more restrictive. That we want to be mindful of those individuals. And Elizabeth, to answer your question, or to address the number of people, that is something this year we made sure that there are double digits in all of the large buildings of individuals who are trained. If there is a time where there's a number of people out and we have a student that may be somebody that is a student that has potential, we also plan for, hey, you're going to be on call for this kiddo today or something. The teams themselves have had really good backup plans. And according to an administration, the building administrators are very comfortable with the number of people we have trained this year. And we do plan on continuing to increase those numbers as needed.
I'm just wondering if you, I just want to just put out, if you want to consider compensation. I think the piece of assigning, as Bill pointed out, such responsibility to anyone, it should not just be assigned, because there are, that whole idea. But I think that maybe, yeah, I don't think anyone should just be assigned. It shouldn't just be part of your responsibility because of emotional, lots of things connected to that. I think you want someone to be able, who's going to comfortably do what they need to do, who is going to be available to do it. I just, the whole idea of just assigning anyone, just really concerns me.
And
we don't just assign anyone. And it really is within their job description that this is why they're compensated a
they
different
know
way.
that when they apply for the job and they're hired.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not. It's not.
It's not you because you're
excuse me,
physically, you're physically fit and,
No.
And people can decline if we ask, if they're interested, they decline, and that's okay. And they can decline for any reason.
Oh, good.
That is, it is not a have to.
Because we want a person to be ready and able, emotionally, physically, etc. It's not just, and when a person applies for a job, they know that that will be a requirement.
Okay.
So
but
that
they can decline
say,
also.
Yeah.
So that's good.
I
Okay.
would like to just clarify something, and that is that, and I should have clarified this in the beginning, but I'm really talking more about the seclusion more than the restraint. And I guess I'm concerned that I understand that the restraint takes a very, very special person or persons to execute, but I was really talking more about being judicious about seclusion, and having the qualified person to judge whether a student really needs to be in seclusion. Because I think that can be really damaging and can be overused if the overseer isn't in the building that day. And I think that law only requires one person to be qualified to determine whether a student should be secluded. And if that person isn't there, if they're out for a week, then what happens? We don't have that in policy.
All of them, anyone who's trained is all of them have reviewed not only the training from Safety Care, but all of the state of Vermont regulations. That was part of we added it on to our training this year so that all staff trained in Safety Care are aware of the parameters directly from the AOE. We actually use the AOE slides, training materials, and quizzes for the staff so that they are all aware. And that is part of having the internal trainers so that they can constantly review and be present during this to debrief. So I share in your concerns, Elizabeth, about the use of both restraint and seclusion. And because that it's important. So we did take the extra measures this year to address that with all staff that are trained. And that at this point totals, I think we're up to, it's 28 or 30 folks across the SU. That in addition to, I reviewed it with all of the administrative, all the principals as well. If they were, we don't have all administrators are not trained in the full safety care, but they were all trained in reviewing restraint and seclusion at one of our meetings this year too. So we really tried hard to cover our bases.
I know, and I really appreciate that. And I said that during the last meeting when we talked about this. And
I have a workaround proposed. I have a workaround. Can we put a sentence in the procedures that says, and it's right after, it's at the end of the first larger paragraph. It just says that the director of special education will provide a report on the number of people trained in each building and what they are trained on as part of their annual restraint and seclusion report. And that way they can justify the numbers that we have. It sounds like under Katie's direction that we are in an enormously better place than we were previously. And I'm really happy to hear what Katie's reporting about. And I feel like it's not, I couldn't find a good place to put it in the procedure because I think that what Katie's saying is that we need a lot of flexibility on the specific number. So I would like that to be part of the annual report.
So that would go into the policy.
It would go into the procedure. Well, the procedure has stuff about, is it the policy that it's in for? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so that should go into the policy. And then let's go on this thing next time.
And I think that would be a really nice way to end the year as we planned. Strangely enough, I got today an email asking us to plan for our trainers for next year. It's, November, and they're already asking me to plan for August, which is great. But that we're already going to be in that process of planning for the buildings and the training over the summer and everything else. So I think that feels, I like that, and not that I need to like it, but I think that helps the transparency as well. And then we can continue the conversation.
So where would they go?
Yeah, Christine, did you find
Yep.
that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Right
Great.
under the
What number?
Part
part 4.
Part
Oh,
four.
okay.
of the
Yeah.
procedure.
Can we vote on it with that language, or do we have to have a fourth reading?
We can add it. You can vote on it, and then with the addition
Yeah,
of
with
this
the
language.
addition of
I think we
that,
should.
yeah.
I move
Okay.
that we vote with the addition of.
Okay, it's in the.
Oh, it's in
item
the,
for
right,
action.
items for action. Right. Okay. I'm on it.
Okay, no, it's quite all right.
I like your workaround.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, next up, we have it is a second reading of non-discriminatory mascots and school branding. And are there any comments or?
That was pretty vanilla. It was just kind of standard. Boilerplate would be the actual word I was looking for.
Yes.
Yeah. It was good.
And I think we're in a good place with our.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. They're, I hope, across the state. Yikes. So the only thing I would ask is that text box that says this policy is issued, and then in there it says this text box and the disclaimer should be removed prior to adoption. That's at the very beginning.
It didn't, you mean this?
Yeah.
It didn't print for me. Okay. So remove the text box at the
Yeah.
very beginning.
Yeah. And are there any other comments? Because I think
Did we move on to library materials or just, I'm not looking at that.
So we can vote on this one,
With the text box removed?
yeah,
Okay.
I think so, today, so it's done.
Yeah, okay. The text box is in the library one as well.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Isn't it strange?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll have Lori look at that.
Okay. And let me see. We have selection of library materials. And this is the second reading. Did anyone have questions or concerns on the library?
Just that it's very, it's a very procedure requirement policy. Which,
And it is even what the American Library Association and the Association for School Librarians. Yeah. There's, yeah. That when there is a complaint, this is what's going to happen.
I mean, this pretty much gives all the power to the superintendent, which I think is wonderful. I think it's sort of a good thing to be like, this person makes the procedure and makes the choice, so.
And Elizabeth?
Thank you, Amy. I wondered whether we should wait until after we receive the results of our equity audit to look closely at this policy.
We can.
I think,
Do we currently have one in place?
I don't think so, but I'm gonna double check right now.
yes, Elizabeth, I think it'd be a really good idea to look at the equity audit before the procedure is created.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how the equity audit is going to affect this policy.
There's one other thing that bugs me about the policy, and that's schools with fewer than 300 students shall employ a library media specialist on a prorated basis. There's like no flexibility.
Prorated means that, I think that's probably the minimum they're talking about, or is that?
It's the last sentence of the first page, or
Okay.
second page. It seems like if you have 260, then you can only pay them 260 over 300. Like it doesn't, it seems like it doesn't give you the flexibility to have a full-time library media specialist if you have less than 300 students.
Schools with over 300 students shall have at least one full-time library media specialist. Schools with fewer. Right, it does.
Maybe prorated is not the right term.
Might not be, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's the right term.
It's,
Yeah.
you think,
Because you could have a full-time librarian for 260
Right.
children.
Exactly.
Well,
For
no,
example.
no, I think it's really simple. Schools with fewer than 300 may employ a
Exactly.
library specialist.
Yeah.
Just a
Yeah.
simple may, not
Yeah.
a shall.
Instead of shall. Okay, so I think this one should go for more,
Should go for another reading.
yeah.
Okay. And I'm looking to see, I don't know, this one was under review, so I don't know that we have
And
one.
I believe it's under review because of all of the challenges that are happening across the country.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so that will be third read?
Yes.
Third read, okay.
Or, no, yes,
Okay.
yes, because today would be the second reading.
Yeah, it'll be 3rd.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
And we'll make that one change to shall to may.
Okay, we are done with that. We are now to items for action, and the first one is approval of the restraint and seclusion policy adoption with the changes that were discussed. I will take a motion to approve that policy.
I'll move it.
Second.
And that is
Do you want me to read
Nikki
the
and
language?
Bill.
Oh,
Yeah,
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 with
that
the
would be
added
fine.
language.
Okay. So it'll go under the superintendent or supports, it says superintendent. Do you want me to leave that, or it'll be Katie with me reporting on that? Shall report annually to the board on the implementation of the administrative procedures required by this policy and shall include any recommendations for changes, if any, related to school district supervisory union policies or procedures. In addition, the superintendent will report annually on how many staff are trained in restraint and seclusion. You want it by school level or by supervisory union? Total,
I think building.
by building?
Yeah.
Okay.
It might take you an extra 3 minutes.
That's okay.
Anne Marie?
Didn't Elizabeth ask about someone who could de-escalate, like having people on staff that can de-escalate the situation as well? Or would that just be included in that same training?
It should be included in that, but it also should be, all staff should be trained in de-escalation
Yeah.
techniques.
Right.
And we don't have a plan for that right now in our.
The CPS trauma work that we're
Katie?
doing that, yeah.
Sorry, quick question. When you said to, and I got distracted, so I apologize. Were you going to report out by building?
Yes.
So one of the things I would question about reporting out for Albert Bridge, given the number of students.
Oh, no, this is staff, trained staff.
They
not-
train staff. Okay, that's where I got, things cut in and
Okay.
out and I got distracted here by something else. Okay, thank you. That's what I
Yeah,
wanted.
yeah.
Train
We
staff.
wouldn't have that.
And I would put, so I think we need to maybe look at a definition of de-escalation techniques. What CPS, trauma-informed training, things along those lines are very much in line with what we are doing for de-escalation, as well as we are looking to see how we can do that with our current training, like taking the first half of what was CPI, what we're doing with safety care. But I think that we could take the year to look and see how that could be, for lack of a better word, packaged as part of our training for all staff.
But I think the point that I've made, and I think Christina's making as well, is that de-escalation training is a universal support.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's how we are doing that already, as well as is there something else that we need to round out with it? Yep.
So in terms of voting on this policy, Nikki made the motion, Bill second. So I am going to do a roll call, starting with online people. Anne Marie?
Aye.
Beth?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
No.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
And Rebecca?
Aye.
Nikki?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And the policy has been approved. Okay, next is the policy on non-discriminatory mascots and school branding, that it be approved with the little text box. Yes. Okay. I'll take a motion. Nikki and Rebecca is the second. Is there any further discussion? I will start roll call in the room here, and I will start with Bill.
Aye.
Nikki?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
And next, going to online, Anne Marie?
Aye.
F?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And Nancy?
Aye.
And this has been adopted, approved, etc. Great. So 2 policies done. Okay. Let's see. So next, we have, so there's an item for action on the subcommittee.
I think we
Is that?
I can bring
I
you
think-
back the data. We can
Okay,
make some
yeah.
determination.
Okay, great. Next is the budget. And I will take a motion to approve the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union budget for the fiscal year 24 at a rate of $12,137,328.
So moved.
And that is Colleen Spence. Is there a second?
Nope.
Second. I'm sorry, who? Nancy?
Yes.
Okay, Nancy, second. Okay. Is there any further discussion?
I just want to thank the budget committee and Larry and Christine and everybody else for all of the work that they've done on that.
Yes, because it's not easy.
No.
It's time consuming and I think there was thoughtful discussion and having this information brought to us by that committee, it was very helpful. And without further discussion, I am going to start the roll call online. Anne Marie?
I'm going to abstain. I can't vote yes on this. I'm sorry. Can't.
Okay. Beth?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Bill?
A pragmatic aye.
Nikki?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
And on this one, I will vote as well. I am an aye. So it has been approved.
Thank you.
And we now have the number so we can start our serious discussion at our individual district level. So thank you, everyone. It's never easy as we go forward this time of year, but I know what we all want is to do the very best we can for all of the kids of our communities. And so thank you for all the work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Larry. And, oh my gosh, we are setting the next agenda.
We're right on time.
We are right on time. Wow.
Bill, the timing works.
follow it.
So I have in my notes, students on the SU board.
Yep. Do you want that as an item for discussion or action?
I think
Or both?
a little of both.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we could use,
Little
discuss, you know,
discussion.
kind of how the procedure that we're using at Mount Cudney. And then discussion, children of teachers attending school.
Yep.
And I have a question mark next to a report out from behavior meetings, and I don't know if that's something that could be next, or we could wait until January on that, or,
Yeah, why don't we wait until January?
okay.
So we do have, under the administrative report, on our schedule, Larry is gonna do a financials in December, right? For us, as you,
It would be January because of the quarter would end in December.
Okay.
Right, so I wouldn't add that until January.
Okay.
Okay,
January would be the financials.
you got it.
And we have the hiring policy. Yay.
I'll see. And do you want to know, quick update on where we're at with No Small Matter?
Sure.
And Elizabeth will be able to,
Yeah, and the listen up as
and the
well.
listen up.
Yeah.
Okay,
And we will also be voting on the timeline, the charge, and knowing who our committee members are going to be for the superintendent search.
steering committee.
And that will be a very long meeting, or a full meeting, not long. It will be 2 hours. And the question is, so the date of December 19th
Yes.
was used, is that?
That's our next meeting in the calendar, I believe, which is the third.
It's the third, because the
Of the
fourth Monday is
Vacation.
the day after
Yeah.
Christmas,
So the
which
19th. I don't think
actually
anybody
I
wants-
can't because my kids are going to be here.
Oh, good.
Elizabeth, your hand is raised.
Oh, it's sort of a placeholder asking for a very brief executive session before we all hang up.
Okay. We can do that. It will be very, very brief. So I think that will be it for our next meeting, and that will be on Monday, the 19th of December, 6:30.
And we'll have some policies. I'll put
And we'll
those and I'll
have-
email you
okay.
with all that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you.
We have to state what the
We have to-
executive
yeah,
session
what
is.
Yeah. It is all under VSA Title
T11. Section
yeah,
313.
T11, Section 313. And what would the topic be needed?
Elizabeth, is it personnel?
It's personnel.
Okay, I'll take a motion to go into executive session.
That's your dad.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll move.
Okay, Nikki, and is there a second?
Second,
And.
that's Colleen.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. And let me see. Roll call. Anne Marie,
Aye.
Beth,
Aye.
Colleen,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Elizabeth,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Rebecca,
Aye.
Nikki,
Aye.
and Bill.
Aye.
Okay, we are going into executive session and
Stopping the recording now.
stopping the recording. Thank you.